Okay, the president said that skepticism is healthy. Well, let's take him at his word on that. The president yesterday went back to church, and I think that is fantastic. And maybe he's going back to church because there he is. Maybe he was motivated by the 828 rally. Now, why this is news is something. It was the first time that our president, who is a Christian, has been to church since Easter. Now, I want to make it clear, I am not his judge. I have no idea what's in his heart. And I know that he has a fine stable of Marxist spiritual advisors like Jim Wallace, and no doubt he is fed by them on many, many Sundays. But why physically and visibly go to church now? Skepticism is healthy, he said. Again, I don't know what is in his heart. Maybe he's going because he wanted to go. Someone more cynical might say it's because his poll numbers are now falling apart with evangelicals. Now, lest you think I'm being too critical, let me remind you of what Newsweek's Howard Feynman said during 828 just a couple of weeks ago. Here's what he said.
Should have joined a church here, okay? Now, I'm not excusing any of the hatred or nasty language or any of the dirty strategy that we're talking about. But some things in politics you have to do at least for the symbolism.
Well, isn't that the problem? Isn't that the problem with America? People do things for the symbolism. Forget about the president in our own lives. Maybe the president was listening to Mr. Feynman. Maybe a politically symbolic gesture. He visited the Church of the Presidents yesterday. It was St. John's Episcopal Church, and this is where the presidents since James Madison, I think, have gone over the last 200 years. They go to be seen going to church. Now, if this sounds too cynical, here's what Politico just wrote about the president's support among pastors. Quote, though several moderate to conservative evangelical pastors support the president, polls show that a significant percentage of conservative Christians remain skeptical about President Obama's sincerity when it comes to the values that he says they share, and many now say they doubt his faith. Well, why are they skeptical? It's not because they think that he's a Muslim or, they hate him because of his race or anything else. They're skeptical for the same exact reason that many Americans are skeptical of other people that go to church. And go to church for symbolic reasons, or go because it's just what we've always done. You can go to church on Sunday and talk a great game, but then Monday comes and not so much. Church is church. That's the problem with America. And I'm not talking about the president. I'm talking with all of us. So did he do this? Well, we got to go back into his past, but only back to last Wednesday. Listen to what the president said last Wednesday.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed with certain inalienable rights, life and liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay, Mr. President, endowed by whom exactly? I mean, if we're going to quote we're going to quote the Declaration of Independence, an important part of that is endowed by their creator. Because when you put that line in, it limits government. Endowed by their creator. Now, some have suggested that maybe he just forgot the words in the Declaration of Independence. I don't think so. Have you seen the teleprompters? Look, you can go to church on Sunday or not go to church on Sunday. But God is every day. I know we're not supposed to question anything this president does. And anytime anybody does question him on an important issue to the nation, we're just viciously attacking him. But when you have the editor of Newsweek making these types of comments about the President of the United States, watch this.
I mean, in a way, Obama's standing above the country, above the world. He's sort of God. He's going to bring all different sides together.
He's God? It is obviously hard for them to understand how anyone in the media could possibly question a deity. Sure, it is tough for them to figure out, but the rest of us mortals are just trying to make sense of the man who's fundamentally transforming America. I've told you this for over a year. This is not about Barack Obama, and not about whether or not he goes to church. I don't care what he does. This is about the progressive movement that has been going on for 100 years. They have tried to destroy our churches, our history, and our Constitution. It is our job to restore that. They destroy our churches. We must renew our faith. They try to destroy our history. We'll get our hope when we know the truth of who we are. And charity? Where does charity come from? Well, the key is, and I've shown you this. This is a book that I think everybody should have. This is Peter Lilback's book. Oh, wow, now it's a #1 national bestseller. Congratulations, Peter. George Washington's Sacred Fire. Everyone should have this. A book I've strongly recommended, and so many people have already, now it's a national bestseller. Along with others, you have to read, you have to know your history. And this one explains why faith is so important to the nation. We are founded on the principles of faith, and that fact drives the progressives out of their minds, because progressives are the big government people, and they cannot see faith as anything outside of the government. For progressives, everything is dependent on the government. That was the reason why we have faith, to not be dependent on the government, but dependent on God. And they don't get it. And when it comes to religion for this nation, I have heard the president ask this question: whose religion?
Whose Christianity would we teach in the schools? Would it be James Dobson's or Al Sharps's? Which passages of Scripture should guide our public policy?
Okay.
Should we go with Leviticus, which suggests slavery is okay, and that eating shellfish is an abomination? Or we could go with Deuteronomy, which suggests stoning your child if he strays from the faith.
Okay, this is ridiculous, but it also shows the lack of understanding this president has for who we are and what our history is. No disrespect, Mr. President, none intended at all. But you need to read Ben Franklin. You need to read our own history, because Ben Franklin was asked that question: whose religion, whose Christianity? He gave a great answer, and I think just this answer is the key that he is missing, that unlocks the door to understanding America. I'll give that to you next. In 3 minutes, Mr. President, let me help you out. Progressives said they needed to destroy our church's history and Constitution, and they've done it. I've translated this into, if you want, they destroyed it, we have to restore our faith, our hope. History, you know who the truth of who we are and where we came from, you'll have hope. And our Constitution is charity. Now, how did I get there? Well, Ben Franklin was asked the same question the president asked. Well, whose Christianity? Whose church are we going to go to? Ben Franklin was asked by Yale. So tell me, what is the American religion? This is how he described it. He said it's very simple. 1, God lives. 2, we will see him when we die. 3, if you read the Old Testament, he gets a little pissy. He'll judge us when we see him. 4, that's why we should serve him. And 5, the best way to serve him is to serve our fellow man. Now, why is that important to understand that this is the American religion? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what church or synagogue or mosque you go to. Does it teach you these things? God lives, you'll see him afterwards, he's going to judge you, and the best way to serve him is to help people. Why did he do that? And how does that lead here? Because under the Constitution, you have freedom. You have freedom to worship, you have freedom to speak, and you have freedom to create. And when you can create, if this is your religion, you will give. Ben Franklin lived it. Ben Franklin, under the Constitution, Ben Franklin had the freedom to invent. He invented what is called the Franklin stove. People were freezing to death. He knew the best way to serve God is to serve his fellow man. So what did he do? He didn't have anybody take it from him. He gave it. He gave it. With his accomplishments, he became so successful, he shared the fruits of his success with others. He took the Franklin stove and didn't patent it and said, everyone can make it. It's my gift. Have we become so evil today that this doesn't happen anymore without government? I don't think so, and nor do you. Bill Gates has given billions of dollars of his own money to charity by choice. My dear friend John Huntsman Sr. has given an even larger percentage of his billions to charity. He's giving it all away by the time he dies. Is it because he has to? No. It's because he's chosen to. We must reject the progressive principles of faith in government programs, false hope in corrupt institutions, and forced redistribution of wealth. Restore these things and we will restore our country. All right, tonight we've been talking about radicals and a choice that you'll have to make. This November, it is huge. And if your friends aren't convinced that there are radicals in this administration, I want you to listen to a very short edit of something I want you to see.
Excellent health care is by definition redistributional.
I think it has, when it gets out of whack, as it did in the 20s and it has now, you need to do some redistribution. This is a form of redistribution.
Are you then calling for the redistribution of wealth in society?
Absolutely, without any hesitation.
There's going to have to be a degree of redistribution.
We know that the free market is nonsense.
The dream was not to put one black family in the White House. The dream was to make everything equal in everybody's house.
What is it that a socialist considers himself or herself committed to? Or if what you mean by economic equality is floors for everybody and ceilings for everybody? Well, floors, absolutely. Ceilings, probably. You have the consumption tax.
We have been guided by a Republican administration who believes in this simplistic notion that people who have wealth are entitled to keep it.
You state up front that your starting point is, quote, no-nonsense Marxism, unquote. But you dispel all the negative images we have been programmed to conjure up with just the mention of that word socialism or Marxism.
I do think at a certain point you've made enough money.
Okay, America, this goes on for about 4.5 minutes. I need you to see the top 20 examples of Obama's socialist ties. Go to theblaze.com and see it there. Finally, America, if you're in Delaware, here's your choice. Chris Coons or Christine O'Donnell. We found out, we told you last week, he's an avowed Marxist, and now we found out that she's a witch. I only have one question. Is she a good witch or a bad witch? Because I've never met a good Marxist. From New York, good night, America.